This is another in our series in this season of Vocations, which began on Vocations Sunday, and I have with me Ross, who I'm going to ask to introduce himself, and then we'll have a chat and he'll answer some questions. Ross.
Hi, I'm Ross. I'm a third-year ordinand at St Stephen's House in Oxford, and come the summer, God willing, I will serve my curacy at All Saints in the city of Lincoln.
Okay, good, and we look forward to having you. So my first question then is, how did your calling begin?
Well, that's quite an interesting question, really, but I actually, after a long time thinking about it, I realized I could pinpoint the day, the moment and the time that I first felt that calling. It was a very cold weekday in January in about 2013. I had a rare day off work and woke up, and for some inexplicable reason, suddenly felt that a question that had been posed to me a few weeks before that, of whether or not I was exploring vocation or ministry, and I'd sort of said, well, no, absolutely not. That's not what I'm doing at all. Didn't seem quite so ridiculous. That really profound sense that there was something there was only really a niggle, but it was there, and it never went away. It only grew, and it really gave me the impetus to think I maybe need to explore this, because it's not something of my own making. I think it's something that feels both organic and slightly mysterious, which I think is quite wonderful with vocation.
So you couldn't actually dismiss it any longer, really?
No, no, and that's why I found the date.
Okay, my next question, what was the first things you did when you realized that God was calling you? You acknowledged it. What did you do then?
I took a really long walk on that very snowy day. I'd not long lived in a new city, and I felt like even though the weather was it was very, very snowy, I thought I need to get out and being in the open air and just in some sense in sort of nature and creation a little more, found that was giving me the space to do that. I also told a friend who is now actually my wife, but she was another young Christian who I'd met at church, and when we next met up with each other for coffee, I said, I've got something to say, and I feel like I've got a vocation to the priesthood, and you know, I'm unsure of that, but I think it's something I need to explore. What do you think? And I had thought, of course, she might go, well, maybe, but she wasn't, and actually she was very affirming of that from day one, which kind of gave me the confidence, I think, to think, well, if someone else is also thinking there may be something there, because I explained quite a lot about my sort of thinking behind it and how I'd been praying on it. Yeah, it was very, it was great to be able to talk with someone else. I think that was really an important step to get there.
Okay. My next question then is, do you think you were called, or were you collared?
I did found reading the book Called and Collared absolutely fantastic preparation for going through the process in the end, but I think it's actually a bit of both. I think our natural reticence to really fully fathom the idea that God is calling us to something uniquely, because each vocation is in its own way unique to that person, to that calling, because it's given directly from God. so I think you're both cold and collared in that. Sorry, my brain has gone ever so slightly off.
Okay, so basically you feel that it was a bit of both. It was a bit of somebody, God got you, but it was also the fact that there was something that you were responding to as well.
Yeah, and I think part of the accepting that you might be collared in vocation is that God's still leading. God is illuminating the pathway forward for you, and that the exploration, the journey of exploration, is not the end at all to whatever may come. It might be that a branch of that path is further illuminated, which takes you in a different direction. And sort of having the trust in that is both really where the wonderful nature of being called and collared comes from, I think.
Okay, so you were called, you went through the process, and you were recommended for training, and you chose a particular pathway for training. Tell me a bit about that, why you chose that pathway.
Yeah, so I chose to train full-time residentially, so that equipped me to, or made me move from where I lived in Leicester with my wife, and we came down to Oxford for 3 years. So moving our life was, of course, a big step, but it was one that we both felt was important for how I might be able to be formed in training. In particular, I was taken with the pattern of prayer life that you can get in residential training, which is different, I know, to others' experience, because in my college here, I have my own stall, and I sit there every single day. Even when we're not in services together, I can take 5 minutes out of my day and nip across to the chapel and have that sort of prayerful space that and totally dedicated to that. And that was really important for me, coming from a background where I'd worked long hours, and most of my interaction with church was the Sundays, because I couldn't get to other services in evenings or during the day. I really felt like that would give me the strongest foundation for ministry going forward.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And obviously you've been through this yourself. What would you say to someone who thinks God might be calling them? What practical suggestion would you make to someone who maybe it is ordination?
I think the one practical thing I would suggest is to make contact with a spiritual director or a mentor. I started having a spiritual director who I've seen regularly since I first had sort of inklings of calling. So that's sort of seven years now, and I've found that to be probably the single most invaluable and sustaining help in not only nurturing my sense of calling and vocation, but also in sometimes dealing with the difficulties of training as inevitably come up, because everyone has them, and having that person to go and speak to is really wonderful, because that's their role within your formation.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. I'm still thinking about other people. What would you say to someone who thinks that God is calling them to something specific?
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, I would say my vocation was a bit of a niggle that just wouldn't go away. It just permeated through my thoughts and started to really draw me into what I felt called to. The question might be, is that the same for you? Is there something that you see in your daily life that you keep feeling and keep sensing that there is something more that you can give, and that's something that you are being called to? Service in all roles in the church are founded, I think, really on that holy joy that we celebrate at Easter. And I'm sort of paraphrasing a little bit there, John Paul II, that we are an Easter people. And that every time we gather together, as Christians, there are those who take on roles within that community. And I think the vocation of the baptized is expressed in very different ways, but that each vocation is about building the kingdom. And so in our daily life, whether it's prayer, work, or fellowship, we always need to be wondering what maybe is more God is calling us to. And prayer really is the bedrock for that. I mean, as it should be. And learning a little bit about what a role might be. So that's not just for the ordained. If a person feels called to a particular pastoral ministry, it may be as a pastoral assistant or as a church warden. And understanding a bit more about that role, I think, and what that would entail would help direct the next step.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing with us, and look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you.